Now, if you move down to the bottom of the ladder, we have the primitive mind. What does the primitive mind do when it comes to beliefs? Some beliefs the primitive mind doesn't care about. Doesn't care about what your favorite color is. There's certain things that are just irrelevant. Whatever, sure, can joke about it. There's certain beliefs, certain areas where your primitive mind starts to attach itself to your beliefs. Your beliefs starts to mistake that for your personality and for your identity. And when it does that, it actually starts to cling on to those beliefs like it would cling on to your body at your safety. Because actually, legitimately, the primitive mind, there's a lot of studies about the primitive mind gets your identity mixed up with your physical safety. And so it will go into fight or flight mode when sacred beliefs are challenged. The higher mind starts off at point A, which is I don't know, and says, well, let's gather evidence to get to somewhere where we do know. The primitive mind starts and says, well, I know this thing. That's non-negotiable. This belief is not going anywhere. Now, let's strengthen it with evidence. So let's read it. Let's find out. The higher mind is going to click on a lot of articles that look like it disagrees because I might learn something. Oh, let's see how strong my argument is. Let's see if this author can poke holes. The primitive mind doesn't do that at all. Primitive mind clicks on articles that it agrees with already. It loves having its existing view strengthened. That feels like safety. It feels great. It feels like everything good. Now, we're not always at the top of the very top or bottom. We're sometimes in the middle, right? So you're trying to find truth, but there's the invisible hand of the primitive mind is there, pushing your search for truth in a certain direction because it's just, oh man, it would be nice if we just could keep these beliefs. And the higher mind saying, well, but let's make sure we're right. Let's actually, and the primitive mind saying, yeah, but come on, let's just, these are right. Let's just. And so you don't even necessarily hear these two voices, but you are torn as you search. And what is this called? Confirmation bias. So at the top, as you move down a little on the ladder, you have a little bit of confirmation bias. You're rooting for something to go in this direction. I can get into I have 4 labels if you want to just fully get into it. The top, I call it the scientist. So when you're thinking like a scientist, that's full higher mind, right? Scientists, and again, not real scientists are often thinking on the low rungs. They'll admit that. It's more the idea of a scientist, the scientific method, right? Start at point A, gather evidence, get to some truth. It'd be nice if we were always there, and we're very often not. Especially, I'm trying to figure out how to, fix something in my house, and I want to get info on YouTube. It's not going to be confirmation bias there. Of course, I'll think like a scientist there because there's no sacred belief. The primitive mind doesn't care. So, but it's how about we talk about maybe the topic of my book, right? Man, it would be a shame if I started doubting that, right? Oh man, that would be a bummer. And so, as a writer, I find myself always having to fight. And, I'm writing about this and then I feel it in myself. It's really interesting. It's like, again, I know I shouldn't eat this bad food, but I'm still going to do it sometimes. Like we still do these things, even if we're aware of them. But so anyway, we get onto the second rung, which is when your higher mind is still running the show more, you're still pointed towards truth, but you're fighting off a lot of confirmation bias, which is, I hope that's where I am when I'm there. I hope I'm not lower than that. And I call that the sports fan because as a sports fan, I'll forget about all the bad calls that go towards my team. And anytime the thing that goes away, I'll be so mad and I'll remember it. And I'm much more likely to see a play and assume that it went, my guy's foot was in bounds. So, and then I see the replay though, and I say, okay, he was out of bounds. At that point, I don't actually want it to be called wrong. I'd rather it be called right. I want them to win fair and square. I still have integrity as a fan. When I'm shown indisputable evidence, I'll change my mind. But I might have a confirmation bias before that point. I'm a Patriots fan. Nothing will convince me that Tom Brady's a cheater. Doesn't matter. But if you show me so much evidence, I'd start to be like, okay, I can't, Bill Cosby. At first I was like, Bill Cosby is a great guy. And I'm sure a lot of us went through this. And we were like, no. And then suddenly you see the first documentary, you're like, oh, no, he's not, right? So this is kind of sports fan land. I completely changed my view, but there was some resistance to it. Then you cross below the midline. So this is kind of rung 1 and 2 are both in the high rungs. You get to rung 3, you've crossed below the midline. That's a key line because now the primitive mind is now more powerful. So now I call it thinking like an attorney on rung 3, which is, if you're an attorney and you're supposed to defend a client and you're listening to the prosecutor make some good arguments and you say, you know what, that was a good argument. I think he's guilty actually. So yeah, I'm no argument for me. You're not that your client would be very unhappy with you, right? You're not being a good attorney. Attorney's job is to say, my client is innocent. Now let's figure out why. right? Now, I know I'm almost oversimplifying what attorneys do, but again, it's this idea, this concept is that you're starting at point B, not point A. And then you're saying, now let's find an arrow, that leads to point B. Let's figure out what's evidence that leads in it, and you'll cherry pick this. Oh, this evidence doesn't make point B look very good. Let's not bring it into the courtroom. Let's bring only that. We'll cherry pick the evidence that does. But people do this in their own heads without realizing it. If you're conscious of being an attorney, you're not really being an attorney. And being an attorney is when you find yourself disregarding, evidence or news stories or opinions that go against your thing without really a good reason. You just say, oh, of course, that guy's a hack. Do you know that? I don't know. And then meanwhile, on the other side, so you become kind of, remember that skepticism meter. You kind of go to the paranoid side there when it comes to things that you disagree with. Everyone who disagrees with me, they're wrong for whatever reason. None of them I can trust. If someone who agrees with you, on the other hand, who confirms that sacred belief, you find yourself being on the gullible side of the skepticism sweet spot, right? You flip-flop between too skeptical and not skeptical enough now. Because suddenly, so you read an article and it confirms what you believe, and you're just going to forward it around and say, see, you're not, where's all that skepticism? It all disappeared. This is confirmation bias, like when it's really strong. And the point is, when you're below that line, the primitive mind is not going to let you change your mind. There's no evidence that's actually going to change your mind. You'll collect all this evidence. You're kind of role playing the scientist. You're collecting evidence. You seem like but you're not actually. Nothing's really happening here other than you strengthening your own belief. Call it unconvincible land down below the line. You're not convincible. So everyone down there is not convincible. Finally, on the lowest rung, you're a zealot. This is when the higher mind's voice is gone entirely. You're so fired up and primal about this topic. And we've all been there. You're so unself-aware about it. You're so that there's not even a need to collect evidence. You're just so sure you're obviously right. Anyone who disagrees with me is obviously an idiot or an asshole. And no, I don't even need to collect evidence. And if anyone disagrees with you, you usually have a really angry, worked up reaction, or just scoff, or you just want to. Now, on the other side of that, when you argue with someone who's thinking like a zealot, it's a very frustrating experience. It's like arguing with a brick wall. So the point of these four rungs is not that, are you an attorney? I'm a sportsman. No, we are all four of these, all of us at different times. The better thinkers are on the high rungs a lot more than they're on the low rungs, but they're on the low rungs sometimes. And the worst thinkers, when it comes to sacred topics, are almost always on the low rungs. The people, and maybe it's you, and you need to reflect on this. Maybe it's you, but people who, when it comes to politics, they've never been on, they haven't been on the higher rungs in a long time. When it comes to maybe religion, when it comes to maybe nutrition, people are crazy about nutrition. Talk to a hardcore vegan, and or a hardcore vegan hater, right? There's a lot of sacred topics. It's not just the obvious ones. Child raising. People are really intense about their views there, and so yeah.